Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Surpassing Labels podcast. I'm your host, Felicia, and I'm so excited for today's conversation because we have such a powerful and inspiring guest with us, Grace Blatt. Grace is an autistic self-advocate who holds a master's degree in psychological sciences. She's a part-time professor at Cleveland State University, where she teaches upper division neuroscience courses, blending deep academic knowledge with lived experience in a way that's truly unique. For nearly 9 years, Grace has also worked as a Good Life ambassador with the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities, helping to create a culture of inclusion and empowerment. She serves on Milestone's associate board and plays a leadership role on the executive committee for the ConneXtion Conference, continuing to make a real impact in the neurodivergent community. And when she's not changing the world, you can find Grace knitting, crocheting, making beautiful handmade jewelry, or hanging out with her beloved cat Finnegan. Now, I know you all are going to be just as inspired by Grace as I am, so let's dive in. Hi there, Grace. How are you doing today?
Oh, good. I'm doing well. Oh, so well. Thank you for having me, Felicia.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it, and I'm so excited for our conversation today. All
Me
right.
too.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
You pretty much summed it up pretty well, but I'm an autistic individual. I was diagnosed when I was 4 years old. I'm also from China. I was adopted from China. And I really enjoy learning about my disability, not so much as just like a fact or a subject, but actually so I can learn more about myself and then learn from the neuroscience side of things how I can better help my brain and help me learn skills that help me develop into a better person and overcome some of my challenges that I face as an autistic person.
Oh, I love that. And especially, I'm a firm believer in the more that we can know about ourselves, it just opens up the possibilities for how much you can grow. So I love that
Absolutely,
so
yes.
much. So much. So would you mind sharing a little bit, because you said that you were adopted from China. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what your childhood looked like for you?
Oh yes, so I was born in Anhui province in China, and I was born in one of the four poorest orphanages in China. At that time in 1996, now you know how old I am, but that's okay. I And at that time, China had the one-child law, and so it was very risky for the mother to keep a child that was female and that who wasn't the male in the child in the family. And so I was given up to an orphanage. And because China did not keep good records for orphans, a lot of there's no way to trace my mother or my father in China. But I was adopted when I was 16 months old, so a year and 4 months old. So I do not speak Chinese. I have some people that tell me, I go to Asian, societies at Cleveland State, and they start talking to me in Chinese, and they'll be like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're saying." In fact, one of my fellow Good Life ambassadors, she took Chinese in high school, and she knows more Chinese than I do. In fact, and so she's teaching me some Chinese things. But I came to the United States in 1997, and we have a special day called my Gotcha Day, which is the day I was adopted, that my mom signed the papers, and that I was officially became part of the United States. And we celebrate that on September 23rd. So my birthday is in May, and my Gotcha Day is on September 23rd. So I'm very blessed. If it wasn't for my mom and my aunt, I would probably be very poor and on my own, and maybe even, dead. So I thank God every day for a wonderful family and for bringing me into the land of the free and the home of the brave.
That's so wonderful. And I would just want to say happy early birthday. And I love the
Oh,
idea.
thank you.
I love the idea of the gotcha day. That's so wonderful. So wonderful.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
as you were growing up, and going through school and things like that, what did things look like for you?
So school, I love school, and I love the aspect of routine and things like that. I enjoyed having people, say this is due on a certain date. I'm actually one of the students that was like Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory. I would always ask, when is our next assignment? Isn't something due tonight? And the students would be like, shh, don't talk about that, Grace. So I was one of those nerdy students that loved homework. But one of the things that was hard for me is recess or lunch hour because it was unpredictable. My autism affects me when I'm socially impaired, and as a young child, I was often bullied because I was very literal, and I would be worried about whether people like me, and I would ask perseverative questions like, "Are you mad at me? Can we be friends?" And a lot of the times that got me into some trouble, and because I was such a vulnerable person, I would be very trusting. In high school, I was suspended because people would say, "Oh, we'll be your friends if you just give us your homework or give us your answers." And so I was succumbed to that. But one of the things that I always talk about is that um, I people un overestimated me because they saw an individual who got a 4.0 in high school and things like that and could speak very well, but they couldn't understand why I couldn't just say, no, I can't give you my homework, or understand that innuendo of people, trying to trick me. They said, you're smart enough, you should have figured that out. And so one of the things that I struggled in my life a lot is with overestimation. A lot of people would equate my academic knowledge for my social, emotional intelligence and equate them as the same. So I was disciplined the same way that a neurotypical would be disciplined in trying to get my homework or trying to push my buttons or provoke me. And so that's one of the hardest things that I struggled in my school days, especially grade school and high school, was with overestimation, and because I have splinter skills, and those are not necessarily on the same equal playing field. The very disparate aspects of my life.
Oh, I thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's one thing that definitely needs an increased awareness because you're absolutely right. Just because you may have the, intelligence, if you don't have that same foundation with the emotional skills, or if you're not processing things in
Mm-hmm.
a neurotypical way to gain the
Mm-hmm.
skills that you need, I mean, people can make assumptions and they can see different ways, but they don't understand where you're coming from. So I'm glad that you pointed that out because I think that awareness really needs to be out there because it's not something that people typically think about.
Yeah, most people think about underestimation. They usually think of you don't people can with disabilities can do more than you think they can do, but also I have an invisible disability, so a lot of the times I face the exact opposite problem.
Yeah, and I think that awareness needs to be out there too because there's so many different layers and facets to a person. Just because they may excel in one area doesn't mean that they have the
Exactly.
best foundation in the others. And we have to look at a person holistically in order
Mm-hmm.
to see where they can grow, where they may need a little
Mm-hmm.
extra help, and not just
Exactly.
jump to those conclusions. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you, my dear, are incredibly fascinating, and I love this. So, teaching neuroscience and having a master degree in psychological science just has to be beyond amazing. So, is there any particular lesson or concept that you teach your students that secretly changes you every time you explain it?
Well, I think when I teach about one of the things that's a little bit weird is that necessarily I don't disclose my autism in the professional world as an instructor, but I think it's interesting to watch people's reaction when I do talk about autism as far as the neurological differences in autistic brains. And so it's very interesting because I almost have to put on a facade because I'm talking about my disability. I'm talking about the struggles I have in social cognition and things like that. But I have the tendency to want to info dump and really talk about my personal experiences. And so, it's interesting to watch my students' reactions to, the questions that they ask about autism and things like that, because basically, I'm educating people about many different types of neuroscience, schizophrenia, different disorders, and things like that. But when I come to disorders that I have, it's very interesting to see how people react to those, the stigmas that they might have, or what an abnormal thing is versus just having a day of stress. A lot of students will say, "Oh, I have anxiety," or "I think I may be a little bit autistic," and so I face that every day, and so. I'm not just in the classroom, but sometimes people will say, "Oh, you're so autistic," or I mean, you don't look autistic, or you don't look like you have you like people will say to me, "Oh, aren't those the people that don't talk?" And I said, "No, I unless I'm lying to you." But a lot of the times people will say over-inclusive things that's actually belittling, or they say, "Oh, we all have autism, oh, we all have anxiety." And so from a psychological perspective, no, you don't, because the DSM, which is the Diagnostical Statistical Manual, has certain criteria that you have to be diagnosed. And also, this is called abnormal psychology. And so it has to affect your ability to hold down a job. It has to affect your ability to cope with emotions and life. And so if these different skills or these different moments that maybe neurotypical might have. Yes, everyone feels anxious, everyone feels stressed, but is that at the same level as someone with these actual clinical diagnoses? And I would venture to say no, because these are not affecting your ability to go to parties or go to school full time or things like that. It did affect me. So when people say, "Oh, we're all a little bit autistic," that to me is very belittling and invalidating, because I know my anxiety is much more different from yours, and that it's very hard for me to to say, well, I struggle more than you. That's very, vulnerable for me to say, but it's also I don't think people realize, they're trying to be inclusive and things like that, but it actually has the opposite effect. And so that's what I try to teach my students, is just to be aware of, you never know when someone has a disability. I do say these neurodiverse individuals, a lot of mental disorders, invisible. And so always be careful of how you, relate to these people or talk about their disability.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up because you're absolutely right. I mean, people tend to unfortunately overcharacterize, overgeneralize things,
Mhm.
and a lot of times I just wonder if it's because they're uncomfortable with the situation and they
Exactly,
don't really
exactly.
know how to respond. So instead of just
Hmm.
asking questions and getting curious,
Hmm.
that's like the default. Let's just try to, overgeneralize things and go there. So,
And
but
yeah, really quick, the people, that's why we have the Good Life Ambassador program that we're part of, because many people are not malicious people. Many people in this world are not mean intention or ill intention. They just don't simply have the education. And so people like me and basically anyone who has a disability, we owe it to ourselves to educate the community and break stereotypes and be exposed to the community, because one of the best ways of learning is not just learning from a textbook or from a third person, but learning from the actual people that have these disabilities, a lived experience. And so that's basically why I became a Good Life Ambassador and why I still am, because I view having advocating for myself as not just advocating for people with disabilities. I'm going to feels those direct changes. So if I do a poor job at advocating for people with disabilities, I'm part of that group. I'm a disabled person. And so I'm going to feel that direct effect of, if people don't understand something because I didn't put 100% into my job, that's going to come back to bite me. And so that's why I take my job so seriously. And so it's very important that I give 110% every day, because it's not like I'm advocating for a different population, like an incarcerated population, that won't affect me. The people's perception of me and the people's perception of disability will immediately affect my life. And so that's why I take my job very seriously and how I say things.
Yeah, and I love that. And not only that, but you really are starting a shift. You're a part of something that is going to hopefully lay a foundation of change for the future generations. So
Hopefully.
I absolutely love that. And since we're talking about the Good Life Ambassadors, for someone who's never heard of the program, would you mind painting us a picture of what it feels like to be part of it? A little bit more just beyond the job description, like definitely tell us what it is and all that kind of thing.
Yes.
But also just kind of paint a picture for us if you could.
Absolutely. So the Good Life Ambassador program started in the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities in July of 2016. So this will be 9 years since the program has started. I got hired in as one of the first Good Life Ambassadors in July of 2016. We hired three individuals with disabilities that were clients of the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities. For short, we go by Cuyahoga DD, so I'll just say that for now instead of that Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities. Kind of a mouthful. And so um, we this program was started, as I said, and before, to give individuals a chance to have a platform and also share their stories because, people in professional roles or people who don't have disabilities but work in the developmental disability field, they have book knowledge. They have knowledge from interacting with other people with disabilities, but they don't have the personal, first person knowledge that someone with a disability would have themselves. And so, a lot of the times things slip through people's fingers. And so we as Good Life Ambassadors like to educate what it's like to be in a wheelchair, or some people, Good Life Ambassadors, that we've had many Good Life Ambassadors throughout the 9 years come and go. And so, this is a job where we go out and speak to the public. We speak to different schools. A big thing that we have now is we speak to different grade schools and high schools about disability etiquette and disability accessibility for people to belong. Um, we want to reduce the amount of stigma and the bullying that happens at a young age, and we feel that getting to that young community is really a good step towards, putting ourselves before kids that may not know what, it looks like to be in a wheelchair, or may not know what it's like to think differently or like to do homework and things like that. And so it's really shadowing, and it's really shadowing in a good way, and it breaks those stereotypes the minute we walk through those doors of wherever we're presenting. We also present at colleges. We present at public entities such as the Cleveland Art Museum, the Cleveland EMS. We present at different different Cuyahoga DD, events. We work with, we go to the State House Advocacy Day. So we also interact with the legislators on a state level. And so it's really important that our voices are heard. And I think the Good Life Ambassador program is an innovative program that not no other county board has in the state of Ohio. And we like to have that innovation to inspire other people to be advocates in the community. And even other counties have come to us and say, how do you start this Good Life Ambassador program and things like that? And so one of the things that we always, encourage is to advocate in your own community. Start, join a committee, join an advocacy group. You don't necessarily have to do it, like a part-time job or something like that, but it's basically the more you advocate and the more you talk about your story and the more willing you are to disclose, what worked for you and what didn't work for you, the more people will want to hear that. One thing that surprised me, and kind of to paint a picture, when I first learned the Good Life Ambassador, when I first entered the Good Life Ambassador program back in 2016, I thought, that I would just be presenting and then I would leave, and I wouldn't, people would just think it's another, form or another inclusion, thing from the workplace. But I learned that people do really do want to hear from people with disabilities. And so it was really shocking to me. And then kind of boosted my confidence in saying that this job really, that these people really want to hear from me, and society really values our personal, personal stake or personal perspective. That wasn't really happening before the Good Life Ambassador program. I also think the Good Life Ambassador program for me is very beneficial because I don't have to interact with I don't have to make relationships, long-term business relationships with all kinds of different people. I go to a presentation, I give up a good presentation, and then I leave. I don't have to become, keep making connections with these people or trying to, work with them for a long time. Because maybe in autism, for me at least, making connections and mm, building long-term relationships can be very wearing and very strenuous for someone with autism. So this job was perfect for me, and it really gives me an outlet to share my skills and my expertise on a short-term basis that's not so much, working with the same people every day.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that. I mean, it just gives you a platform to tell your story and to kind of lay the foundation for awareness. And I love that you guys go into schools and target, the younger kids because you're right, a lot of them don't have experiences with this population. And just bringing in your stories, the things that you've went through, the things that you struggle with, and you guys having the capacity and the willingness to share your story and to be open and vulnerable too, I think is huge because there's not a lot of people that do that. So I think just having that and promoting the awareness is a huge thing. So I absolutely love the program and I love what you guys are doing because you're just building those stepping blocks for good things to come in the future. So so good.
Absolutely,
So good.
yes.
And it sounds like you guys go into many different avenues with, the
Yes, many different avenues.
speeches. I
I
did.
think the Good Life Ambassador program has given over about in the past 9 years about 500 presentations. I have done in the past 9 years about 300 as a Good Life Ambassador, and
Oh,
about 100 in my own time through speaking engagements that I've conjured up that I've developed by myself. So outside of the Good Life Ambassador position.
oh my gosh, you should be so proud of yourself. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. I love that. So amazing. And I think just being able to show other communities, counties, even states what is possible with programs like these is just setting a precedent that I really think a lot of other places should follow just to be able to promote that awareness. And I just love what you guys are doing. I love it.
And I think one of the things that empowers people with disabilities is learning job skills and learning. And so this program is we are independent contractors for the Cuyahoga DD, and so we work 12 hours a month as the minimum. And so this not only teaches people with disabilities who come on this program, just to advocate for the greater good, but it also teaches them speaking skills. It teaches them interpersonal skills. It teaches them how to be responsible for attending meetings or preparing for presentations and things like that. So it's also a program that helps build skills as well as not only it's achieving two goals at the same time. So a two-for-one sale.
Yeah, I mean, you're empowering and spreading awareness. That's phenomenal.
Exactly,
It's
exactly. Yeah.
wonderful. Huh, I love it. All right. So being a Good Life ambassador sounds like it is definitely a powerful experience, but also a personal experience. What is something that the Good Life Ambassador program has taught you about yourself that you didn't expect?
Well, one of the things that the Good Life Ambassador program has taught me is that I I enjoy speaking to people and I enjoy having the interactions, but it can be very wearing and tiring for me. And when I say this, I enjoy it to the hilt. And but it's energy. And one of the things that I learned through the Good Life Ambassador program and my other jobs that I've had in the past is that I have to be careful of how many things I commit to. I'm a very, willing person. I'm a very helpful person, but I have to, maybe you've heard of the spoon theory or things like that, and I'll explain that, where, I use little beans or beads. And so I start with 10 beads a day, and then in the morning, and then if I encounter a stressful situation, maybe it's because it wasn't there was an unexpected, assignment that I had to do, or a student wanted to meet with me, or as simply as I'm defending my thesis. I defended my thesis a year ago, and that took almost all my beans in one presentation, where they grill you and things like that. But it's positive. So a lot of these things necessarily don't have to be negative. It's positive energy. I could defend my thesis every day if I had unlimited beads. And so, but I had to be careful is that one thing I learned about myself through the Good Life Ambassador program, there's so much to do. There's so many opportunities to really get into the community. Not only do we present, but we also do tabling events for the community development and for the different aspects of the county board. We sometimes help man a mobile sensory space that Cuyahoga DD has for different events. And so I learned that, um, helping is good, but you want to take care of yourself before you can, give to others. And as they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so one of the things that I had to learn is that I have to be aware of how many beads do I have left. My mom would check in and say, how many beads do you have left? And it really helps me self-monitor myself and say, well, I'm down to 3 or 4. Maybe I should not, take on more rigorous tasks this afternoon and just decompress. Because for me, getting down to 2 or 3 beans or lower than that could mean a seizure. It could mean dysregulation going into a meltdown. And then what does that do? That's just like bottling it up and then exploding at the end. But and so I really had to learn that skill. And I think the Good Life Ambassador, because we're all over the community, we're constantly busy. And I really had to learn how to pace myself and know, I had to, gauge myself, because I'm a very gung-ho kind of person. Like, let's go, let's go. But I had to realize that I'm autistic and I have limitations. And so I had to kind of love myself before I loved other people, because as I said, you can't pour from an empty cup. So,
Yeah, and that is something so important for everyone. I mean, just being self-aware and knowing that sometimes you don't always have to give, because if you have
hmm
nothing left to give, it's not going to end well for anyone.
exactly,
So
exactly.
I love the idea of the beans. That is amazing. It's like a visual tactical gauge to
hmm
see where you're at. So I like that a lot.
Yes,
And just realizing that it's okay to have those boundaries, energetic wise, or whatever kind of
hmm
boundaries that you need to make sure that you are keeping all the replenishment in yourself that you need and taking care.
exactly, exactly.
So that is huge. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh,
That's
you're welcome. Yes.
okay. So you have been a part of a lot of different organizations and committees. What's one lesson about leadership or community building that surprised you the most?
Well, something that surprised me the most is that a lot of people have, they want, I think what surprised me is that people have great visions. I think there's a lot of people that have great visions, they have great ideas, but there's very few people that actually follow through with those ideas. And so we need both kind of people. So I'm definitely not a visionary. I have ideas, but I'm the person that gets the job done. You tell me what your idea is, and I will get it done. I was at an internship the last summer in 2024. Um, with Cuyahoga DD, and I learned about myself that I was doing a lot of administrative and data analytics and behind the scenes work with the community development department. The community development department constantly goes out and makes, connections, makes places more accessible, and creates partnerships with different places to, install universal changing tables and things like that. Long-term projects, and they're always we're technically almost the face of Cuyahoga DD. We're always out in the community. But one of the things that I learned about myself is that I'm a person that doesn't need to be in the front row, or that doesn't have to be the front of the organization. I'm someone, and I do, sometimes people think of me like I go to different events and they say, hi, Grace. 50 people say hi. And I was like, who are you again? I'm so sorry, I forgot. I've never seen this person because I have a photographic memory, so I would have remembered the face, but they see me and I don't see them because I do a lot of presentations on Zoom and a lot of people's cameras are turned off, but mine isn't. So they recognize my face, but I don't know who they are. And so, um, getting back to, I learned that I am good at doing the background work, with having, being the person where I am told, what you want done, what your idea is, and what the steps you need to complete that. So I will make copies for people. I will make hundreds of copies. I will do the data analytics and see if a survey is measuring what it's supposed to measure, if a program was effective, and things like that. If there's a change in on the amount of people that are receiving our services from different underserved zip codes and things like that. And so I learned that about myself. And I always wanted to be like every other kid, wanted to be famous, wanted to be out in the front and, a big deal. But I learned about myself that does not fit my personality, and I am actually very good at, doing the background work because I don't have to make so many relationships, and I don't have to worry about interacting and keeping relationships up, and communicating with a lot of people at a lot of time. I just simply communicate to my team. They go out in the community and then they bring back the work for me to do, which I am very grateful for because I could have never done their job. And so I think what I've learned about when I'm part of leadership organizations or things like that, I'm in leadership organizations, but I try not to be like the president or the vice president. I usually say, "Can I be secretary?" And
Yeah.
in that way, I've learned, to go for those positions because that's what makes me happy, and that's what makes me the best I can be, and to use the talents that I do have, because I realize that not many people have this side of the follow-up process and the get things done. A lot of people have more of the visionary side where they have great ideas, but they don't have the follow through capabilities or things like that. So I definitely learned that I can help fill the gap with my needs that are less prevalent than other people have.
Yeah, I love how perceptive you are because I can definitely see that in a lot of different scenarios, but especially with leadership and community building of the people that have the ideas but can't follow through, and the people who
Mhm.
like to go, 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 go and get things done, but not necessarily have the big ideas. So the
Exactly,
dynamic
yes.
is really interesting to watch and see. And I just love how self-aware you are of where you fall in and what feels right for you. And but you can see the workings around you. So that's amazing. And part of what I do as a coach, I use human design in my coaching things. And I'm just fascinated because you're describing like how parts of human design kind of correlate with things. And I'm pretty fascinated by that. So I'm like,
Well,
I just love that you went there.
psychology taught me something, so
Yeah, I just
yeah.
love how you went there. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, very good. All right. So one of the organizations that you're a part of is ConneXtion. And that sounds amazing. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So actually, ConneXtion is put on by Milestone's Autism Resources, which is actually the organization. ConneXtion is what was formerly known as the Milestone's National Autism Conference, and so ConneXtion is going to be held June 10th and 11th of this year. And it's I'm on the conference committee. I'm on the executive conference committee. I'm also on the associate board, so I help raise money for the organization. But Milestones is special in that it helps individuals, not necessarily, they don't actually give the services or provide the services, but they connect the families to these services and customize a package or a group of a set of resources that will help that individual meet their needs. We help people. A big part of of that organization is to help people in the people of color community get diagnosed and get services, because that's a very underserved autistic community. People who are Spanish speaking, who and Latino, who may be underserved and be not get the full health care, same privileges as other people who get diagnosed. And so I think it's really a great organization that really helps people, meets them where they're at, and be able to, curate a plan with them, to give them hope, because autism, for many parents and for even individuals, is can be they describe it as devastating or very challenging or a letdown. And so this can be, going into unknown territory. I know for my mom, when in 1997, when I was diagnosed, it's there wasn't a lot of things like on Milestone's Autism Resources, where you had to do the research yourself. You had to, and moms are working their tails off, fathers are working their tails off. Having a child with a disability is very expensive, and so you don't have a lot of time to do this this research. And so having a resource like Milestone's Autism Resources really helps the community and filled in a need in the community, that gap for, there's plenty of providers that are, providing resources and things, providing services. But Milestones kind of is the point person that will connect you to those resources and really make sure and follow up with you to make sure that you're happy with the resources they connected you with. And so this June they will be having 2-day conference. The first day is actually free. It's actually going to be at John Carroll University, and it's basically the first day is going to be vendors, different food trucks, different activities for the neurodiverse population. And the second day will be a more of a for professionals to earn CEUs, continual education units, and for speakers of professional realms to speak on different topics about autism and cutting edge research. I will be presenting on day 2 as a featured speaker, talking about the neural differences in sensory processing and perception of autistic individuals, and how those individuals, how autistic people, can't just be told, oh, ignore that loud siren or ignore that thing. There's actually different parts in the brain that are hardwired differences, anatomical differences, and physiological differences that prevent an autistic person from filtering out those different stimuli that may be overwhelming to them. And so I'm there to collate a lot of information from different studies and say that you can't just grow out of something that's in your brain, that's something that's hardwired, and you can't always even, teach behaviors or replace behaviors, because these are natural things that are occurring and that are part of our actual body and brain anatomy. So I'm very excited to be at ConneXtion. I've been on the conference committee since 2018, and I've spoken at the conference every year since 2017. And I've been on the associate board since 2020. So I also volunteer, and some of the presentations I give on my own outside of Good Life Ambassador through Milestones as well. So it's a great organization and a great way to fill in a gap of the autistic community. So.
Oh, and that sounds absolutely amazing. And especially that they're there to help to provide the resources to the families. I think that's huge because, I, as a special needs mom, I understand completely when you are in the situation and you're just trying to get through your day-to-days, trying to find the resources and the different places that you need to take your child to, it can be so overwhelming. So a place that has everything there for you and you can go to one place and be connected with the resources that you need, that is so huge for a parent. So that it's giving me goosebumps. I'm like, oh, sounds amazing. So we'll definitely link that organization as well in the show notes for anybody listening. So if anybody wants to check it out, absolutely.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
All right. So, can you tell us about a moment when your personal passions like knitting or jewelry making has helped you unlock a deeper insight into your own mind or your emotions?
Well, I think I love making jewelry. I love crocheting, knitting, and all that things because it's a conversation starter, and that's one of the things sometimes autistic people struggle with is starting a conversation, entering and leaving a conversation. And so I like to always bring a little gift for everyone. In fact, if we were in person, I would love to. I mean, if you, I would love to. If you have a business or a PO box, I would love to send you something as a
Oh,
thank
so
you.
sweet.
There's many things that making these crafts serves two main purposes. The first purpose is it relaxes me. These things help me decompress. It helps me, I always have to have my hands busy. I talk with my hands and things like that because it's a self-stimulatory way for me to focus and for me to understand and to really think critically about what I'm saying. But these crafts not only help me, relax and, let out my autistic ability and help me decompress, but they also let me help give me a connection. For instance, sometimes, I'm used to, as a child, I'm used to having, negative experiences where, oh, she's odd or things like that, or she speaks funny or things like that. But, it's kind of been my hallmark to give people things, and many people know about this, but it also is a conversation starter. And so, saying that a lot of times there's the bad rap that people with disabilities or people with autism are not empathetic or they are egocentric, meaning not in a bad way, but they are unable to think of other people or to think of how other people view them or theory of mind tasks or things like that. But I try to show that I do think about other people and that I do, enjoy using my craft and just to give it to people. I don't sell my crafts very often. I don't, have an Etsy shop. I do the crafts because I feel that it's another way that I can give back to my community just by making someone's day, random acts of kindness that can truly make a person's day, whether it's, a Swarovski crystal bracelet or it's something out of jute or hemp or things like that. And so I think making it a priority to make these crafts also helps me slow down and take the time to relax and to build my beans back up, but also it gives me an avenue to share a special interest. I've been knitting and crocheting since first grade. I've been making bracelets and beads that are made out of paper since first grade as well, and so it's a skill that I've really learned very well. I call myself a string and bead expert. If there's something that has to do with string or yarn or thread or different kinds of beads, there's probably I know about it in some way, shape, or form. So you have some people that just knit or some people that just crochet, and they're really an expert on that. But I like to be eclectic in my different crafts. So like I do knitting and crocheting in the winter, and then I do a lot of my jewelry in the spring and summer. And so I really like to stay sharp at all my skills because it helps me, have a purpose in giving gifts and being able to relax and to use my different talents in a productive way.
Yeah, and I love that because, there's so many different ways that people can rejuvenate themselves. As you said,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
helps you get your beans back. And it doesn't have to look one way. I mean, for some people, it's going for walks outside. For other people, it could be, doing different type of physical activities. But, crocheting and doing intricate work like that, I mean, it absolutely can be another way to replenish yourself. And I love that. And there was something that you said about like autistic people not showing emotions and
Hmm.
things in the perceived way. Um,
Yes, yes.
and I really am glad that you brought that up because I just think that it's important for people to realize that, things do not have to look a certain way. people
Mhm.
can express their love, their emotions, their empathy through different avenues. And for you, I mean, I could hear when you were talking about your jewelry and giving it to people to show where your heart is. It's like you're giving a piece of your heart to that person. So just, having promoting the awareness that it doesn't always have to look like people being stepping in and doing things for other people or being overly, you know, please and thank you and all that kind of stuff. It can look different for the different person and just being open to what works for the person where they're at. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I think the capability for love and empathy is expressed in a million different ways. We just have to be open to seeing what works for that person.
Exactly, exactly.
So I love that you brought that up. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what is a misconception about autism that you wish would just fade away over the next 10 years?
I think um I think a misconception, the biggest misconception that I mentioned earlier is that um a lot of autism is a spectrum, so it affects 1 in 31 individuals in the United States, and a lot of people have a certain, label. The Asperger's is no longer a diagnosis in the world of psychology, and according to the medical the DSM, the Diagnostical Statistical Manual. But I think when people think autism, they I think they think either you are high functioning autism or low functioning autism. And that's very labeling because people think of autism as, either you're nonverbal, you grunt, you can't, dress yourself, things like that. Or they think that, you're super like Einstein and or Bill Gates or things like that. You're just quirky and things like that. And there's so much more to autism than that. And when people use the labels high functioning or low functioning, it's very labeling and very, almost like saying, you're better if you're high functioning than someone who's low functioning. And that's actually, if you think about high functioning, if you really think about it, what are you high functioning in? It's such a vague way of describing autism. Are you high functioning? Are you functioning in activities of daily living? Are you functioning in social emotional intelligence? Are you high functioning in academic intelligence? Are you functioning in, critical thinking, things like that, and problem solving, and things like that? There's so many facets of autism that are simply can't be described on a linear function. It's more so, as I like to think of, like a color wheel, where the red wedge of the wheel is represents aggression. One orange could represent anxiety. Purple could represent, tics or fidgets. Um, blue could represent, um, special interests or academic intelligence or things like that. And so I think when we see people with autism or meet someone with autism, it's a better question to ask them is like, oh, are you really smart? Or, are you someone that has to, go to a day program that's very limiting? But actually, a lot of autistic people have a special interest or things like that. Or I've had some people say, it's not autism, it's your superpower. Or they'll say, so you're autistic, what's your thing? Or what's your special interest? Or things like that. And so those questions are a lot more accepting and a lot more welcome because those questions show that I'm just like anyone else. I have special interests. My coach, Jimmy, he loves sports. He could talk about sports all day, and he's just such a wonderful man. But we all have interests, and so taking it from that standpoint that we are more alike than different is something that I would love to see, really meld in society and really see people understand that at a massive level, at a societal level. So.
Yeah, and I love that. And, just kind of like bringing it back to what we were talking about before, if we could look past the labels and just realize that people are people, and if we get curious rather than just get uncomfortable and start asking those questions and just embracing the person for who they are and where they're at, and, wanting to know more about them, I think that it would create a
Exactly.
shift that is just. so much what we need these days. So,
And I think people they either stare or they but people with disabilities, and I can talk for many people that I know, not all, but some people, we don't mind questions. We actually find it very, accepting, and that you want to learn about us, and that you value our perspective and the needs that we have. And so a lot of times people with disabilities are not, not going to gatekeep what they have, or, those needs. If you're genuinely interested, and that shows, people with disabilities are going to value that. They're not going to say, like, why do you want to know? Or that's not your business, or things like that. People with disabilities, we're learning, as we're progressing as a society, not just in disabilities, but in the LGBTQ community, things like that. We're learning to ask the questions that may have been, viewed as taboo or inappropriate, but now we're learning how to explore those things, and people with disabilities are learning that, these questions are okay, and this is how we further advocacy and further inclusion.
yeah.
So,
And I think that you can always tell when a person's coming from genuine curiosity and a place of
exactly.
acceptance and love instead of being from a place
Nosy.
that's not
Yeah.
so nice, you know?
Exactly.
So I
Yeah. Yeah.
think I think that plays an important part too. So yeah. Well,
Absolutely. Yes.
okay. If you could leave our listeners with just one message about embracing neurodiversity and living a good life, what would it be?
I think too, I think one of the things that I would say, that the big take home message is to be appreciative for what you have. A lot of the times people with disabilities are always wishing, why was I born with this disability? Why was I, different? And so it took me, and one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life is that I do struggle, and to accept that I do struggle, that I had this mentality before, all of my life before my first year in college. Like, why do I have to go to therapy? Why do I have to have an individual education plan, an IEP? Why can't neurotypicals come to learn how autistic people communicate and things like that? Why do I have to go to therapy? Why do I have to, go to a psychologist and things like that? So it's very ornery, and very had a entitlement mentality. And it was because of my mom, who really was honest with me, and she helped me, learn that because you have a disability, you are different. But different does not mean less. It just means different. You are going to struggle with things. You are going to, fail at things that other people don't naturally struggle with. You are going to have to work twice as hard in certain areas of your life than other people. You are going to, bend more than halfway so that you can achieve your goals. And so it didn't really take me until the first year of my college career to learn that I I am different, and that I do struggle with things. And for me to be successful, and for me that meant going to college and getting a master's, and then eventually getting a job. It meant that I had to stop, asking people questions about, like, are you married, or do you like me, or things like that. It meant that I had to stop, being worried, or, like, interrupting conversations when I heard the word brain or something like that, or something of my special interest. It meant that I had to, stop, verbally, attacking someone because I thought that they did something unfair and I couldn't drop the subject, or things like that. So there's a lot of things that I think that I would say to, mostly to people with disabilities who may be listening or watching this podcast. you know, Experience is important, and this is a skill that I learned. But there comes to a point where you hit a roadblock. And so what are you going to do? Are you going to keep, acting in the same way, or doing the things and rest in your laurels? Or are you going to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and acknowledge, and really, what we call self-determination is to really say, I do struggle with this. I really, I'm horrible, and this is my weakness. What I have to work so hard to keep this in, and not to feel bad about it, but actually as a challenge. People that run marathons have to train for years. People are in the Olympics. And so it's not like you can just get the skill under control in a few days. This is a muscle, you know. We talk about in neuroscience, the more you develop a skill, the more wrinkles you have in your brain, the more better you're able to learn a skill and to form that habit. And so it's the same thing with autism or any kind of skill that we're trying to learn, social skill, is that society is not built for autistic people. And not to say that we're not doing inclusive efforts, but right now, to be honest with you, this world is not built for autistic people, we or neurodiverse people. And so right now, we have to keep advocating and keep doing what we're doing, but we have to acknowledge that, be real with ourselves and say we might have to bend a little bit further than we anticipated for us to succeed. And that's not a bad thing. That's just something where we are challenged and everyone is challenged. And so that's where we have to accept that defeat and accept that we are different, but and that we have so much to achieve when we do conquer those limitations.
Yeah. Oh, that's so well said. You just hit the nail on the head right there. It's wonderful. And I think that self-acceptance part is huge. And just realizing that you cannot let anything that you have going on, any diagnosis, any situation, circumstance, or anything define you. And I think that's a huge thing. Just accept yourself for who you are, but don't let it define you and know that you can always go the direction that you want to go. So don't let things hold you back. I love that.
Absolutely,
Love
yes.
that. Oh, so good. So good. Well, Grace, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you sharing your heart and your wisdom and your journey with us today. So thank you.
And thank you for having me. It's been a love. I've been honored and blessed to be on this podcast. And thank you for all that you do, Felicia, for the disabled community.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Thank you. Grace, thank you so much for being here and sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your incredible journey with us today. Your insights in advocacy, education, and truly living a good life are such a powerful reminder that embracing who we are is where real change begins. To everyone listening, if Grace's story moved you, be sure to check out the show notes to connect with her and learn more about her work. Until next time, keep embracing the extraordinary within the ordinary and remember that your story matters.